Borussia Dortmund, they duke it out with Chelsea in their first leg round of 16 game in just a few minutes time. It's going to be a fascinating meeting of the minds as well. Edin Terzic and Graham Potter studied together for their UEFA Pro license and are actually quite good friends. Eric Rademacher is still here with me along with Brent Sancho and Juan Arango. Eric, you have friendships with coaches, especially in the league out here in Jamaica. Talk to me about that dynamic and how you approach certain matches when you're competing with them.
For me, it makes it more interesting. There's more motivation, there's more knowledge of the thought process that goes on in your opponent coach's head, which makes you go in a little bit more into detail because you think that you know the opponents a little better. I think in reality it's a very similar approach that you have to every match. Whether you know the coach or not, there are certain decision making that you expect the team to make and you're going to adjust to that. So I don't expect much difference because they know each other, but as I say, personally, it's a nice little extra addition of motivation.
Yeah, it is. Let's get into the match now and speak about one player in particular who we expect to have a really good impact, and that's Jude Bellingham. Brent, talk to me about him. How good is he becoming as a midfielder?
You know, about 2 years ago, I saw Jude Bellingham in Wembley Stadium in a Nations League game, and I was just blown away, guys. I mean, obviously, watching a game on TV, you get to see particular things, but watching him live, his movement, his thought process, the way he sees the game, the type of execution or passes he was attempting to make, I was completely blown away. And I've seen a lot of football in my lifetime, and I've not seen a player that captivates a football field the way Jude does. And when I saw live, and I think if he continues on the path that he's going, he can easily be one of the greatest midfielders that played the game. I know that's a huge statement, but I truly believe so because I was able to witness him live, and I'm continue to see that greatness throughout what he's done in his very young career. So I can't rate him high enough, and I think he'd be a huge influence in today's activities.
So this matchup with Enzo Fernandez is going to be really interesting because it's also a glimpse into the future. You would know Enzo Fernandez really well. Talk to me about that dynamic you expect in the middle of the park with both these youngsters going against each other.
I mean, it's funny because, Brent's saying that I got to see both of them in the World Cup and the maturity level. I mean, when Enzo Fernandez was 6 years old, they're already giving him a nickname. It was called the Musician because he was the one pulling the strings at his youth team. And he had the maturity to be able to handle situations. He did so in Qatar, and you saw eventually what it ends up showing in River and now at Chelsea. So when you see Enzo Fernandez, he's the one that's able to control. He does have that temperament that he might not be as flashy as Jude Bellingham, but his thought process, though his decision-making processes, and the difference that he does make shooting from outside, especially that portion of the game, he is just one of the players that might be able to change a lot of things in the Premier League in years to come. To me, you see Enzo Fernandez and you see a player that's just very different from a mental standpoint, and that shows exactly why he alongside Jude Bellingham are going to be players to be looking at in the future.
Eric, Sebastian Haller, he's in the starting lineup for Borussia Dortmund this afternoon, and what a fantastic story he's had. Of course, he was reinvigorated under one Erik ten Hag at Ajax last season. He scored 11 goals in the UEFA Champions League, and he's made the transfer now to Borussia Dortmund. Of course, he has recovered now from testicular cancer. A remarkable story for the striker.
Yeah, as I say, outside of the football, you look at that story where, at a young age and even so many good things are happening for him in his life, and then you get hit like that. It was really a tragedy when that news came out, but, when we see now the story when he's back playing football again, it adds so much extra to the story of Sebastian Haller. He wasn't in England, wasn't performing that well, reached back to Ajax, back to Netherlands, joins Ajax, and as I say, scored 11 goals in the Champions League season. Gets his transfer to Borussia Dortmund, then this happened, but on his debut back now, he scored right away again. Yeah. Chance has it now that they need a striker. Makoko have some light injuries, and now it's time for Haller to shine again at this stage. So it will be great to see him. I think Haller is a player that once the team around him creates chances in the box, he will get his goals. That was a lot what happened at Ajax, a lot of movement around him. He can stay positioned right in front of the box. So if Dortmund can get to that stage where they can serve him with those balls, I expect him to score goals. Maybe not a lot in this match because it will be a difficult match, but throughout the Champions League.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Chelsea in just a second, but before we get into the details, let's hear from their manager, Graham Potter.
Well, we've got a squad that we have. It's a Chelsea squad. It's a squad that we're really excited about, but at the same time, we know there are challenges. We know there's work that we have to do, and whenever you're forming a new group, if all of us just started to work together, we would have to take some time, and we'd have to understand each other, and understand what makes us tick, and understand how we can help each other. But I must say that's the impression I get when I see the boys on a daily basis. Is good spirit, good harmony. They're pushing each other in a good way. We had a good training session today. You can see the guys are working hard, trying to support the team, trying to support each other. So. Whilst there are challenges, there are lots of things to be happy about as well.
Brent, as I said before, they are no Benfica. They've had their difficulties in getting the players to acclimatize to the conditions and getting to know each other. Of course, they did acquire 8 players. Only 3 can be registered in the Champions League. Why do you think it has been so difficult for Chelsea?
Listen, if Graham Potter doesn't have a huge, big fro of grey hair at the end of the season, he would have gone through the season very, very well. I've not known a coach at this level of football that had to deal with so many incomings in a football club, so many injuries, new owner. I mean, everything that could possibly go wrong or happen in a wrong way in a football club has happened under Graham Potter. And of course, he's still a very young coach as it relates to this level of the game. So I agree with him. I do think he needs some time. I think that what they've brought in, certainly the capacity in terms of talent-wise is certainly there. But again, it's going to take some time. I know the previous ownership at Chelsea was a very quick-firing type of ownership. But if Chelsea is safe, they bought well. I think they've done very well. I do think they still need a striker. But outside, I think they bought well. They need to give this man some time. I know a lot of Chelsea fans don't want to hear that. But that is the fact of the matter. You've invested heavily. He needs the time to sort it out.
One, I'm trying to wrap my mind around the plan for Chelsea with all these acquisitions. I remember when Thomas Tuchel was in charge and he said that he didn't really want to be too involved in the transfer window, and they sacked him. They've got in Potter, and it seems as if they're doing their own thing, giving the squad to Potter. I'm not sure how much influence Potter would have had in the majority of these signings. So what do you think is the overall plan from Chelsea here?
As far as Todd Bowley, I don't know if he even knows about football. He knows a lot about baseball, but I don't know if he knows much about football. That's the problem at Chelsea. And they have no scouting. It's whoever they tell them is a good buy, they go buy. And there's no negotiating powers. And that's why Benfica were able to get 120 million out of them. So when you see that, that is where the problem ends up. Now, will he acquire experience and start learning the ins and outs eventually? Yes. But right now, there's a lot of disarray outside of Graham Potter. And Graham Potter is just the one in front that's being able to get all the bullets, if you will. Todd Bowley's somewhere in the back. I'm putting the money, but he doesn't know the difference between throwing and a third base coach right now. So when you start having those types of individuals influencing your transfer policies, then that's where you end up having the problems that Chelsea have presently. Now, can they overcome that? Yes, they can.
Eric, we mentioned Fernandes before, and we speak about him with a huge price tag that one would have mentioned before over his head. As a youngster, how would he be able to deal with that on a Champions League night?
I think after a World Cup final, and the pressure that you have from that, and it's not this. I think once Argentina reached the final, there was already some pressure on Enzo to perform, and we saw what he did in the World Cup. So I do think as much as there is pressure on him, he will enjoy it and embrace it in a certain way.
And he played at a much bigger club than Chelsea. He played at River.
That's one angle for you. I tell you what, one of the acquisitions is a little player called João Felix, who came across from Atletico Madrid, of course. Cesar Azpilicueta has been speaking about him.
Knew him from Atletico when we played against them, and also when I was watching their games in La Liga. But I was quite surprised when he arrived because the quality that he has is amazing in training. I think the last game against West Ham, he showed the way he can turn, the way he can create spaces, passes in training. He has been unbelievable. Honestly, he has been very good. So he scored a goal. I think that will help also for his confidence. But he's a young boy with great experience, with great confidence, who is making already a huge impact in the team. And I'm looking forward to seeing him every day on the team and perform at this level.
Eric, Felix starts. Havertz is a striker. There's no Cucurella at left back. Chilwell starts in that position. What are your thoughts on those changes being made by Potter?
I mean, you already said, there's some performances from last match to say we have to change it, but
Indeed.
I think overall he's very happy to see Chilwell and James back out wide again on a starting lineup. And I mean, getting back to Felix, I'm very much looking forward to see Emre Can starting for Dortmund in a defensive mid position. But I'm a big fan of Felix. I think over at Atletico, they never really used him. I don't think the coach and Felix really gelled well to get the best out of him. But he's such a lovely player to watch. And I think that's where Dortmund has to either, or that where they can lose the match, or if they can able to lock down Felix there, they can actually have a chance to go and win it. But that will be an interesting battle to follow.
Brent Koulibaly and Thiago Silva, of course, they're at the back. What are your thoughts on the Chelsea lineup? What are you expecting from them? Because they do have the quality players. You do expect them to get it right at some stage. Is this afternoon the day?
Look, yeah, they do have quality players, and I think when you look at their deficiencies, it's right where you just mentioned. It's defensively. I must say that Thiago Silva has performed exceedingly well, and the Chelsea should, but Koulibaly hasn't. He's certainly not the Koulibaly from Napoli that we saw come into Chelsea's really struggle, and I think that's one of the concerns I have for Chelsea. They defensively they look short of confidence. They look a team that looks void of ideas, and I do worry for them because Bellingham is the type of player that runs in behind and goes advanced, and Dortmund plays quite high up the park. So I think from a Chelsea perspective, yes, there's talent up front, but I think defensively I have serious concerns.
Juan, Emre Can, Jude Bellingham at the heart of the midfield for Borussia Dortmund. Sebastian Haller, we mentioned his story a little bit earlier, up top, starts for them. What are your thoughts on this Borussia Dortmund team? What are you expecting from them?
Again, it's a team that from its DNA, you know that they pressure high. They're going to try and shorten the pitch up a little bit. They're going to try and be able to take that ball away from Chelsea, force Chelsea into making mistakes, because it is about that. When you're facing a team that finds itself looking to find its way, bar the redundancy, you have to be able to put them in doubt immediately, because mentally that's when you end up having the advantage. Dortmund do have the tools to be able to do that. Now, when it comes to the offensive end, we have to see how Sebastian Haller does step in and come in, although we've seen the successes that they've been able to have in the Bundesliga. The big question is, will it translate into success in this match, in this competition, especially in such a wide open field that we have in the round of 16?
All right, gentlemen, it's time for predictions here. Brent, just a correction, because you did mention that you called the AC Milan Tottenham game right. No, you didn't. I recall you saying 2-2, but we don't need to get into details. That's really just water under the bridge. Your predictions for this afternoon's match.
I got one of them right. I couldn't remember saying I did say 1-0 somewhere along the line. I know I was correct somewhere.
PSG, you said 1-0 to PSG.
He said that in the final last year.
Yeah, I think I did. I think somewhere along there.
It's like a clock that doesn't work. You're right 2 times a day. But go ahead.
I'm gonna go Dortmund for sure. This one 2-1.
Yep. So too easy to call. 1-0
Dortmund.
Okay. Eric.
I mean, they haven't lost this year yet, I believe. So I have to stick to my colleagues and I will give it to Dortmund, but a 2-1.
Yeah, just to go further into discussion, because we did mention before that, you know, the dynamic between these two teams are going to be interesting to observe. Is there something specific that you're looking forward to on the field of play?
As I say, it's the matchup, the two matchups that we spoke about, the Enzo Fernandez versus Jude Bellingham. And then we see João Felix and Emre Can. Those are two matchups in the midfield that I really look forward to see. With exciting players, but also looking at Chelsea. Before the injury with Reece James, they were really threatening from those wing backs. So it's something that I look back now. Can they actually now come in and even though with new players, new system, and still maintain a certain threat coming from those wide wing backs?
Well, I know that you look at these matchups with real intent. And I want you to pick out something that probably others wouldn't see in terms of the matchup you expect and who do you expect to stand out in this type of game.
You're getting me surprised because right now that's exactly what I looked at once more just to make sure I didn't miss out on anything. The bench, the substitutes, in particular one, because you look at the Chelsea bench and you start looking at Gallagher, Mason Mount, like players that they don't convince, they've been erratic. They haven't been able to truly find their form. You go over on Dortmund's side, there's one that steps in, and he's been able to step in ever since the World Cup. And we're not talking about because he had a World Cup, it's because he barely played in the World Cup and everything that occurred within his national team and his coach and him. That's Gio Reyna. And can he make that difference? Because let's go away from anything that he did in the World Cup. In recent weeks, when he's been able to perform for Dortmund, he's been able to do it, and he's been able to be a difference maker. Outside of that, that's one of the matchups I'm looking at. Who comes in? Who's going to be that relief who's going to be able to come in and offer something different if the match isn't going one way for one team or the other?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. The Signal Iduna Park is one of the best sites in Europe when it's really kicking. The full capacity, 80,000 strong, a dynamic atmosphere always awaits us. Borussia Dortmund, Chelsea, next.